Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. First of all, I'd like to thank the regular 40 or 50 of you who actually watch my videos until the end. I'm surprised to learn that 40% of viewers click away in the first 30 seconds of my video, which means I have less than 10 seconds to make an impression. How crazy! Retention rates matter more to me than view count, so please stick around until the end. Today, I want to talk about why the EUC industry is probably going to die a very slow death. But unlike my usual videos, I'm filming myself changing my tire instead of riding in the woods. After riding it for 12,000 kilometers, or 7,500 miles, I've torn the base of the valve stem of my inner tube. Most likely because I have been riding off-road with low tire pressure. The green slime I injected into the inner tube started leaking from the base of the valve several weeks ago, and I noticed that the tire wasn't holding air very well. In the future, I will ride my wheel at the recommended tire pressure, even if it means I will have less traction on the gravel. I'm still in denial of the fact that the Master Pro is not designed for trails. Still, I ride it anyway for the sake of making somewhat legal YouTube videos. I sincerely hope New Zealand will one day legalize the EUC. If you haven't already noticed, the 6 major EUC makers, including Bigode, InMotion, Leaperkim, Kingsong, Extreme Bull, and Nosfet, have not released many models of EUCs this year. If I'm not mistaken, there were only 2 new EUC models released this year, the Lynx S and the Xeno. Even though the Lynx S was essentially a revised version of the Lynx. There were some grumbling rumors about the release of the Bigode X Max, but I'm not sure when that is going to ship. Kuji Rose recently made a video about why he thinks the EUC industry is dying, and I suspect he knows what's coming better than most of us. As usual, let's see if we can scrape some data from Google to back up his claims. According to Google Trends, the number of searches for electric unicycle has peaked in August 2015, but has stagnated ever since. There was an unusual peak in interest in February 2026 when Alien Rides filed a patent lawsuit with the ITC against other EUC companies. The number of searches suggests that people aren't very curious about the EUC, which is disheartening. Of course, it is a leap to think that curiosity alone represents EUC sales, but it is a quasi-indicator of that.
Hey, no, they're not going to play with you. Come with me, you two. Hey, unicycles.
Yeah,
Good for you.
that's electric unicycle.
Come on, puppies. Come on.
So how do EUCs compare to the other PEVs? When I overlay the search term for electric kick scooter, we can immediately see how its popularity exploded after the pandemic and continues to rise. Not only that, e-scooter popularity is further dwarfed by the e-bike, which continues to enjoy a year-on-year rise in searches. I was surprised to learn that even the electric skateboard and one-wheel outperformed the EUC in terms of popularity. Although the one-wheel's popularity has taken a dive since November 2021 and is now on even keel with the EUC today, this suggests that the EUC is the least popular form of PEV with the fewest Google searches. The pattern of the searches also reveals something telling. Unlike EUC searches, searches on e-scooters and e-bikes have a seasonal pattern that reflects a broader use case that goes up in the Northern Hemisphere summer but declines in the Northern Hemisphere winter. This means they are probably adopted by a broader range of users, including food delivery drivers, daily commuters, students, tourists, enthusiasts, and people from all walks of life. On the other hand, the EUC has failed to penetrate the broader market by appealing only to enthusiasts. Now, is this surprising? Not to me, and certainly not to Kuji. In his video, he mentioned the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of the EUC, and that is entry barrier, safety, price, and legality. Although I don't disagree with him, he has left out market-driven factors in human psychology that matters more and may contribute to a very slow death of the EUC. First, the EUC is an alien piece of equipment, enough to generate shock and intrigue but not sustained interest. Most people prefer familiarity over novelty, and the traditional bicycle reigns supreme in this respect. The e-bike has a massive head start compared to the EUC due to its long history. It is not confused about its identity. It has a larger community with a self-sustaining ecosystem, and it is already embedded into many cultures for many generations. Whenever I am approached by a member of the public about my wheel, they are usually interested in knowing three things. How fast can I go? How do I balance? And how much does it cost? In other words, they are concerned about how dangerous, how skill-intensive, and how expensive the EUC could be. Nobody was curious about getting one. Second, the EUC doesn't solve any new problems that the e-bike or e-scooter doesn't already do. Whether it's commuting, off-roading, or long-distance travel, the e-bike and e-scooter do a similarly good job, except with a much lower entry barrier, better public infrastructure, more public acceptance, and a similar, if not cheaper, price tag. Other than the cool aesthetics and fun, the EUC fails to compete with other PEVs in every other aspect that would realistically drive sales. And this may explain why it only attracts a very small group of middle-aged people with special interests and disposable income. Last but not least, the EUC is more vulnerable to shocks in the system, such as trade wars, regulation, and supply chain issues, due to its small and niche market. It relies on the same manufacturing ecosystem as other PEVs in China, and by that I mean EUC companies source parts from only a handful of component makers. In other words, should there be a change in regulation or a new trade war with China, the parts manufacturers may choose to invest their resources in more profitable PEVs such as the e-bike rather than the EUC. This can lead to less innovation, higher pricing for parts, and longer lead times. In the long run, designing, making, and selling new EUC models becomes increasingly expensive and laborious, further driving down market demand, thus leading to a slow and painful death. I chose the EUC because it is fun. If I had prioritized other things such as public acceptance, safety, or price, I would have adopted the e-bike or e-scooter. And because of my bias, I am willing to overlook all of its shortcomings, including the fact that I am breaking my back changing a tire because there isn't a nearby repair shop I can visit. In the end, when viewed objectively, the EUC is not inherently better than other PEVs. Like everything else, it wins out in some respects, but loses out in others. And with the market being oversaturated with PEVs, it is highly unlikely that people will pay much attention to the EUC at all. Okay, with all that doom and gloom out of the way, I need to poke some holes in my theories to stay real. First, it isn't clear how much Google search trends reflect buyer preferences. There might be search engines in other languages that show something completely different. Second, although Chinese parts manufacturers may deprioritize investment in EUC parts, it is more likely that they will diversify their manufacturing lines as a form of insurance. And third, rather than a painful extinction, The EUC industry may stagnate or grow at a snail's pace to reflect its market demand. It won't rival the e-bike or e-scooter because it appeals to enthusiasts rather than the broader public, which is something we all need to accept. The more important thing is this: we need to ensure that EUC makers such as Bigode or InMotion don't go under so they can keep making wheels for many years to come. Unfortunately, people like me are a problem because I tend to get attached to one wheel for years before buying another. For those of you who own EUCs, I suggest taking good care of what you have and try not to let the police seize your wheel. There is no guarantee that you will get it back or that the Chinese are going to build you another. Is it a good idea to hoard EUCs now? I don't know the answer to that question. Hoarding EUCs necessarily means there are fewer wheels to go around, and we all know what happened when everybody hoarded toilet paper during the pandemic. But hey, don't let me stop you if you have the money to do it. Personally, I'm going to make sure my wheels last as long as they possibly could before resorting to hoarding. And that's all I want to say about the topic today. For the sake of myself and every rider out there, I sincerely hope I am wrong and that this video ages horribly in the months or years to come. Ride safe everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!